Hello and welcome to the Let's Talk Azure podcast with your hosts, Sam Foote.
And Armstrong.
If you're new here, we're a pair of Azure and Office 365 focused IT security professionals. Each episode, we talk about a specific topic in the space. This week, it's episode 6 of season 3. We're going to have a chat around Microsoft Defender for Office, a set of features to help protect and educate users around email and document phishing attempts in Office 365. Hey, Alan, how's your week been so far?
Hey, Sam. It's not been too bad. It's been a bit busy. How about you?
Yeah, likewise. Yeah, it's going pretty quick this week for me, to be totally honest with you. It always sneaks up on us, and another podcast episode recording. So, yeah, but it's good to be back, and yeah, we're hurtling through season 3, which is good, which is really positive.
Yeah, we definitely got into a routine, I think, now. It doesn't seem too daunting now to do these podcasts, or
No,
episodes at least.
exactly. We got our process down, haven't we? So yeah, it's not too bad. Right. So Microsoft Defender for Office. Alan's going to take the lead in terms of being our subject matter expert on this one, because he is Mr. Defender. I'll call you that for this for this one. So yeah, I'm gonna fire some questions at Alan. Try and grab as much information as I can from him. Yeah, and hopefully we can get you some nuggets from the from the front line of actually implementing Defender for Office. So without further ado, Alan, could you just give us a brief sort of high-level overview of Defender for Office?
Yeah, sure. So Microsoft Defender for Office is one of the 3 or 4 Defender products that have been out for some time now. And it's, as it sounds, it's all sort of technology or security features around Office 365. So this is focusing around protecting those areas. So this kind of comes with security enhancements in Exchange, Microsoft Teams, and SharePoint OneDrive. It comes with a attack simulation training, which is quite an interesting one. Comes with some more advanced reporting and threat investigations around email campaigns and things like that, as well as bringing in automated incident response into the Microsoft 365 Defender portal.
Okay, so we sort of got a bundle of different technologies that are all layered on top of because it's interesting that they call it Office, right? Because I'm sort of the first way I sort of thought about Defender for Office, it was like just sort of antivirus for Word, Excel, etc. But actually, we're talking more around Office. Well, it's not called Office 365 anymore, is it? So it's a bit strange because it's actually, it's Exchange, Teams, SharePoint, and OneDrive, right?
Yeah, it's all around that SaaS offering, isn't it? So
Because yeah, I suppose it's sort of representing a Defender on top of the back end systems that run Office, if that makes sense, more than the Office like suite itself.
yeah, true. I mean, there is some parts of it that is user interacting, or
Yeah,
may see some of it. But yeah, it is around the underlining protection before the user's consumption kind of thing.
yeah, exactly. Okay, so can you give us some examples of those enhancements to Office 365?
Yep. So quite a lot of it is around email exchange. So this is looking at the um, as part of the kill chain. It's the initial sort of phishing side of it. So this is trying to get users' credentials and things like that. So one of the main ones is safe attachments. So what this does is that it runs in the background, like you said. So when an email comes in with an attachment, it will go off and uh, detonate it within a sandbox potentially before the user gets it, so that you can determine whether there's any links in there, or if you run it, whether it actually does anything within that sandbox. So it's like a pre-test, I guess. Um, and with that mode, you can specify how the user, or when the user gets the email. So there's different modes there. So it's like a monitoring mode. So it just goes, the user gets the email as normal, but it gets detonated all the way through. And if there is a issue, then it will in effect remove it later. Um, you've got the mode where it waits until it does the detonation, so there's a bit of a delay on that email. The delay for the detonation is probably 40 seconds to maybe a couple of minutes, depending on how big or how many files and things like that are in there. Um, and then you've got the delayed delivery, and what that does is it sends the email body, but leaves the attachment off with a little placeholder, and it in effect saying the attachment's being scanned by Defender for Office, and then later on it will then update that email. So there may be a that scenario kind of works with you want to see the content of an email, a legitimate email to see that you're going to get something, and then you receive the attachment later. So there may be some scenarios where there's key information in that email, and the attachment is the secondary, I guess, and that sort of thing. Um, Other parts are within SharePoint and OneDrive, and this is around malware, and this is kind of attached to the safe attachments. And this is where a user may upload or synchronize malware into SharePoint and OneDrive unintentionally, or maybe just upload it from their home machine, so they can do that from they have access to that. But what Defender for Office does, it doesn't necessarily go and remove it. It goes and stops users from re-downloading it, synchronizing it, and opening it. So it's a sort of not necessarily an afterthought, but it's protection once we've detected sort of thing. So once something gets uploaded, it gets scanned. I mean, you have things like Defender for Cloud Apps, which we could do another episode on, that can do that scanning as well. But this is actually stopping that file there and then, and that's within sort of probably a few seconds, maybe up to a minute as it scans it. So that's those two. You have anti-phishing. Now, Exchange Online Protection, and that does do anti-spam and anti-malware kind of things, but Defender for Office brings in this anti-phishing, and what that does is it's more of a user interface change, in that, say, Sam, that I email you from our work accounts, and then all of a sudden I email you from my personal account to your work account. The name is the same, still Alan Armstrong to Sam Foote, but in a first instance, you may not check that email address because it looks identical. The name's the same. Maybe even LinkedIn hooks up to it, or whatever it might be. And you may actually, that might be that point where the CEO is asked the financing team, hey, can you wire me some money because I need to, I've got this thing I need to pay for it, sort of thing. And that's where you might not see that. Well, what this anti-phishing does, it brings up prompts to say, this user doesn't really email you from this account. Are you sure it's them? And I think that's really good, because it might be legitimate. I might email in, from my personal maybe to work occasionally, but at least it gives you that sort of visual indication that you maybe do need to check it. And then one of the last bits is safe links. So this is when an email comes in, when a Teams message on chat or the channel is there, or within a document if there's any links, they go through in effect a proxy where they get checked. So when you click on a link, it goes to the safe links URL. At that point, one, it gets scanned as it comes in anyway by Defender for Office. But secondly, you can click on that link and it will go and check there and then, because sometimes malicious links are activated or weaponized later on to get past anti-spam, anti-malware kind of things. So this does an at the time check, make sure that the website doesn't have any malware, or does some of the checks that Microsoft does. If it's okay, it lets you through. If it doesn't, it blocks you there and then. And I think that's really powerful, because you don't have to. It reduces that risk of the user clicking on something and putting their credentials in, and and those credentials being harvested.
So effectively, we'd say, so what we're doing is we're like with all. all of these, items that you've just been through, we're sort of scanning and analyzing emails that are coming in and their attachments. And I think you mentioned, when it's doing that scanning of the attachments, you can actually see like the body of the email, right? So you don't fully block the user's experience; they still, gain access to whatever's in the body of the email, but the attachments will then be scanned, um, I assume most of the time those are finished scanning before somebody's even realised they've received the email. I assume, right? And then you've then got, so that's like, in the early life cycle of the email, like as it's actually received, we're doing that initial, hit of, does this look like spam? This goes. I suppose this is a level on top of just anti-spam,
Yeah.
checking. So we're analyzing that email as it hits the inbox, to make sure that we're happy with it. But then, safe links is then doing, the the proactive protection further on down the life cycle of that email. Like let's say somebody receives that email at 9 o'clock at night, and like you say, um, the the link where the link that's maybe in that email is a quotes safe link at that point, and then like, yeah, 12 hours later, 24 hours later, whatever it is, it switches over to a malicious URL or something like that. Safe links is doing that scanning, you know basically, forever, into the future, right, for the life of that email. So that's not just giving you sort of one time protection; it's giving you like real time protection, forever, isn't it, for that email?
Yeah, absolutely. And it also protects against like legitimate organizations. Maybe if you work with a partner and they've been compromised, you may trust them completely, and their link may go to their website, which was at the time of sending that email legitimate,
Yes,
and
yeah,
they've been compromised and now they're not. This kind of protects or tries to protect against some of that. That's because it's not going to catch. I think we need to be fair that it's not going to catch everything. It's there to try and hit as much as it can because, again, like we said, there may be nothing on the website that suggests that there's malware there. It's as much as what Microsoft can scan of that link and what files. And what I believe it does as well is that when you have a link to a OneDrive file, it will go and scan the file as well.
okay,
So it's not just Microsoft's OneDrive for Business, you know it's Microsoft, it's trusted. Okay, I believe let's just let it all through. I believe that it also goes off and checks the files so that it can't be like hidden that way,
yeah,
because that is
yeah,
one
exactly,
that's
yeah,
one B in it. Like I trust this link because it's coming from OneDrive.microsoft.com.
yeah, yeah, definitely, yeah, and yeah, because I suppose that is how we see the majority of incidents beginning, like um phishing and spear phishing and things like that, those email is an entry point for a lot of people into an organization, right? And it's like a public address that you can send anything you want to it, right? So having those extra layers of protection is, yeah, vitally important. You can see the value there, for sure. I've heard about attack simulation training. So how does that work? It kind of sounds a bit, uh, um, it kind of sounds a bit horrible, to be totally honest with you.
So I thought about it being a bit of fun, to be honest, but
Well, I don't think I want to have a simulated attack run on me. It sounds a bit daunting as an end user, to be totally
true,
honest with you.
true. I
But I'm sure
guess
it's got the
it's
best intentions.
so the attack simulation training from this Defender Office has had a few iterations, but the latest ones are really good. So what does it do? The idea of this is that you can run phishing campaigns, safe phishing campaigns, against your internal organization. So you can see how well your users are trained or are able to negotiate what an email might be classed as phishing, or it may look a bit odd, and you can in effect um, assess the risk that you might have of your users causing your organization to be compromised. Now, I think a lot of organizations now are doing um, these phishing campaign training side of things. I think it's quite a standard thing, and there's loads of products out there that can do it as well. But Microsoft, in effect, brought their own in, and like I said, the latest version is really good. So there's loads of uh, payloads, simulation types, um, and they're always growing. You can also gather your own, where they've actually been pushed to you as an organization, and Microsoft will de-risk it, and remove any of the the malware or any of the bad links. And you can do this because you might have a um, contact us like email address where maybe the the bad actors will send stuff to try and catch someone out within that. You can in effect point the Defender for Office at that email address, and it will start sort of checking for any bad emails or any bad emails that come from to that email. It will then pull them and then strip them out and create some. So you've actually got some like real live attempts against your organization sort of thing. So that's really good. So the different types of attacks you can do, or simulation, I should say, is you can do a credential harvest where user gets a link. If they click on it, then it gives them a what looks like an Office Microsoft Azure AD sign in. They can type their credentials in, and if they do, they get to this page going, "You shouldn't have got here," really. And they get like a splash screen, like we should, you need to do some training or something like that, and you can make that splash screen after that, to a corporate page as well, so it can be branded and on your website and things like that, or maybe an internal page. The other ones are malware attachments, links in attachments, links to malware, drive-by URL, as well as OAuth consent grants, which is one of the things we've seen recently, isn't it, Sam? That a lot of people are asking for permissions to access, your 365 via OAuth. So that's the kind of types that you can do. Um, so when you do a campaign, you can specify who the users are when you trigger it. So you don't have to do it there and then. You can say, well, at 9 o'clock in a week's time, I can do it, or I can run it, in a month's time, so you forget about it. It will tell you who hasn't had a simulation attack against them or when their last one was. So it will kind of suggest people to target. And then once you go for that campaign, it gives you, it gives you the information about who clicked the URL, who put their credentials in, um, who reported it, who deleted it, who read it. So you can get that sort of idea of how your users are, interacting with these phishing emails. And once you got all that information as part of sort of the campaign or the simulation, you can specify that if someone gets caught by it or goes so far, then they can do some training. So Microsoft has have generated some modules of training about to educate the users around what they do with emails, what to look for, and that kind of thing. So that's really good. And I think in the recent view of it that I've seen, you can actually just beforehand you can only put users on that once they've gone through a simulation. But now I think you can actually target users to say, okay, now you can do this training. We also do that every 6 months, kind of thing. So yeah, I think it's really good. We use it internally, and in an organization, we tested it out, and we were well aware. We were well aware that who we were targeting and things like that. And we actually made an email come from someone internally who was the finance officer, and we sent it as him, and we put on the email, "There's a new HR system, um, or finance system. Please log into it, and you'll be able to see your pay slip and stuff." I think once we sent it, I think I think it was within a minute, that person was ringing up saying, "I did not send this email. We need to lock it all down," and things like that. And it was really interesting about the response from that. I mean, we was a small organization where we did that, so it wasn't like thousands of users that were getting it sort of thing, but it was really interesting.
Yeah, I've used attack simulation um, on an organization as well. We managed to capture one full credential input as well, which was I think um, it just showed how convincing what the organization was doing is they were bringing in security awareness training, and what they wanted to kind of do is get a baseline before they started to actually see, how effective the security training was. So we ran attack simulation training, attack simulation, before the training, and we never publicized any results. Nobody ever got any feedback. We didn't do anything like that. It was just to try and understand the maturity of the organization with with very little, training to start off with. And what's also great is I believe it integrates with if people report it as well. So like the metric is not just it's not just about did they or didn't they click on it. And I'm not sure if you covered this, but you can also see if they reported it or not as, actually a phishing attempt, which is, to be honest with you, for me, that's the KPI that you really care about, because it's not only do people just go, oh, that's a phishing email. It's actually, reporting it as well. So um, so that was really positive. Then they went through their cyber awareness training, and then we picked a really random time to, and we didn't spearfish. We just did like a drive by sort of phishing attack. I don't know what it was. I think we used one of the OneDrive ones. Like, you've been shared this file, which it doesn't actually even look like the email that comes from OneDrive, to be totally honest with you. It is convincing because it's got like the branding on it, but it looks terrible. It actually looks like somebody's really badly copied it, right, and not even had anything. Um, and so the first time we got one, and the second time we didn't get anything, and we got quite a few reports as well of it. So it was definitely, but it just allows you to sort of validate, how good your security awareness training like actually is, right? Which is because people pay a lot of money to put like their whole company through security awareness training, and sometimes you think, is that actually worth it? Am I actually getting good value from that?
Yeah, and and we can do so much with technology. We have got the human factor, um, and yeah, you're right. We don't, it is to be used to kind of, like I said, I think it's kind of to identify your risk to that sort of type of attack as well, so you can see where you may need to improve, or actually you're doing pretty well. There may be a specific department maybe that are um, less educated around detecting these sort of attacks and things like that, that may need, not necessarily, maybe it just needs some additional training, or um, some maybe some just additional training, or just some extra care with stuff coming through to them.
Yeah, and that's why with all these technologies, you have a mix of technology and then user driven behavior, right? Because the technology can only go so far, can't it? Right? You talked about safe attachments, anti phishing, safe links, and all of that sort of stuff. But there is bound to be times when you get like a 0-day campaign against you, and there's absolutely no way of you know um, effectively blocking that with technology potentially, right? Because some of the attacks are very, very, very sophisticated. Like I've seen ones where they send you to OneNote, legitimate OneNote, and then share you a link from OneNote from your email to get around, like, they like
Wow.
double
Yeah.
they double link you through OneNote and things like that. So some of these and they target companies where they've like breached a company, and they understand the technology that you like if you B2B through OneNote or OneDrive or something like that, then they'll target company B. Like if they're inside of company A, they'll target company B with the technology that they're actually using to actually talk to each other. So like it can get incredibly sophisticated. So yeah, I've seen some really horrible, well, um, good tech kudos for ingenuity, but bad in terms of what effect it can have on organizations and people, right? Because at the end of the day, when people unfortunately follow through with some of these actions, a lot of the time they take that really personally, which is what we're also here to avoid, right? Is them not feeling, that they've done something wrong, right? We're here to help protect them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so attack simulation training. So uh, part of this is advanced reporting and threat investigation. Can you take that us through that, Alan, please?
Yeah, sure. So, with Exchange Online protection, you do get some reporting. It's not there. You do see some base sort of levels, but this kind of goes into the different types of attacks. So um, you can see things like the whether the how it was detected. Was it threat intelligence? Was it Defender for Office? Was it um, the anti-phishing or the anti-malware or the safe links and things like that? You can also get the reports on um, malware that's been that someone's attempted to click on as well. So you can see users that have attempted to click on malicious emails and things like that. Um, to see, you can see then maybe there's some that's another way of sort of identifying your risks. Seeing the which users are actually clicking on real malware but being blocked by the technology. Um, some other parts are the compromised user alert. So this is around detecting an internal user that maybe has been compromised, and then they're sending out mass emails to either people externally or internally to then increase their spread of the attack, kind of thing. So that's quite new. Um, you get this threat protection report, which in effect goes through, like I said, classifying the alerts that you're getting for the malware. So and phishing. So it will tell you, how many are open at this category, what severity, um, and other things like that. Um, the other parts are the threat explorer. So this allows you to go in and see the different types of attacks that are happening against you, but also see all the emails in a list. So you can then select them, and it will tell you a bit more information about it. So you can do a bit more hunting. It will show you, it will be able to show you the links. You can sort of render the email without actually opening it as well, and it will tell you, why it got blocked and things like that. So you can kind of start looking at maybe some false positives as well around that. But the other part to that is that it will show you whether there are some worldwide campaigns happening within the world, and whether they're actually targeting you, which is quite interesting. So you may have those drive-bys; they just like spam everything, but you may actually be um, might there might be a target against a phishing campaign against local authority or government organizations, and you can see whether you are being part of that campaign and what the type of emails are coming to you. So it will, it gives you like in effect a campaign ID, and it will tell you what it is. So there's a bit more detail about that sort of campaign, and so that's really good. But yeah, I think it kind of covers sort of the advanced reporting. That there is quite a lot of information there. Um, but yeah, it's more around just showing you what's happening and how much you're being protected.
I assume you know um, threats and attacks and phishing campaigns and X, Y, and Z. These types of attacks must scale with the amount of users that you have, right? Your attack surface grows with every user that you add to your system, right? So my assumption is if you're somebody inside an organization that is tasked with let's say email security, right? Let's say that's in your under your purview. Is this why you maybe need to not just to understand about awareness or specific technologies, you also need to think more wider than a new type of threat has emerged. Let's validate ourselves against that potential threat that's there. You know, I use like like how the world sort of imploded when Log4j happened, right? Maybe not the same specific like thing for here,
Hmm.
but as those large scale campaigns, like the sort of the sort of things that maybe C-suite hear of, right? Like
Yeah.
it's hit the register, it's hit like some sort of something else that they might maybe not the register, but something else that they might read, right? And they found out about it, so it's high profile enough. You're also looking for some sort of validation that you can give about how you are protected against those specific types of
It,
threats, right?
yeah, it's that, but also it's identifying whether you are being targeted for that, that wide way, that very publicized campaign as well,
Yeah,
so that if you're part of that target as well. That it also shows who's being targeted as well as numbers. So you're right. You might only see if you've got an organization of 10,000, only 50 people are being targeted. That's not too bad at all. But what department is being targeted? Is it the finance team that are being targeted? So there might be a list. Then it kind of gives you that intel that maybe there's a list out there that says who's in your finance team and that sort of stuff. If it's widespread across multiple teams, that's maybe just a open source intelligence sort of scenario of scraping LinkedIn or something, maybe.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, it's really interesting when you think about like managing, because we maybe sometimes think about, yeah, there's there's different like threats and scenarios that you have to think about across the whole product suite that you're maybe managing, right? Like
Yeah,
we might think about putting making sure our log sources are going into Sentinel, and to and to really focus on our network perimeters and things like that. But actually, you kind of forget how much. Well, I do, especially because I'm not like in internal IT day to day, but the amount of time and energy that must be spent, tracking these systems, like Office in general, right? It must be a challenge.
yeah, definitely.
Okay. And is there any element of, well, if we talked about ways that we can try to understand incidents, but is there any sort of automated incident response elements that we can harness here?
Yeah, so because it is a Microsoft Defender for Office, a Defender product, the when it malware comes in, or a fish, it's probably more malware, and it's still phishing as well. Um, Sort of emails come in, they do go into the Microsoft 365 Defender portal as incidents and alerts. So they go through, um, especially with now it's all being integrated into the single portal. There is an automatic instant response sort of capability for it. So that means that when an incident comes in, it automatically goes into investigation mode and starts, checking, checking the email, checking other users' emails, and things like that, and seeing where that's come from and whether there's any other emails similar within the organization. So Microsoft have got something called 0 hour auto purge, or ZAP. In effect, what that does is once an email or malware or link has been detected. Again, this might be, as it says, sort of 0 hour, sort of a compromise, or a 0 hour issue. Um, this goes through, and once it knows that now there is there is a there is a malicious link or email, it will then go through Exchange and remove that link, that file, that document across the organization, which I think is really good, because it doesn't mean it's not just as it comes in; it's after the fact, when it's been weaponized, or once it is known about. So that is really good from my view.
Okay, so
Um,
it's not. Sorry to interrupt you, Alan. So it's not just focusing on a specific email, right? It's then understanding that there is a threat inside of one email, and then applying that to the whole of your organization after the fact to make sure that it's completely purged, like from your system. Is that what you're saying?
that's what I believe. Yeah, that is what
Yeah.
I
Okay.
I I believe that it does. I don't think it's targeting specifically, an email address. I think it's looking for that, that hardware hash for that file or that link within all the emails.
Okay, yeah, that's really powerful, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And because it's going into you know Microsoft 365 Defender, um, it's then including it's then also checking other sources that may be enabled, like Defender for Endpoint, Defender for Cloud Apps, um, to see what is happening, or even Defender for Identity. Actually, in that point, this user has now had something. Is there anything else that's happening around, the other products for this user or for this attachment? Is this potentially, if that hardware hash has been identified now, is that file on any of the devices you have that are managed by Defender for Endpoint? If it is, right, we need to go off and get it because someone might have saved that file. It's then starting to look across, and that's where this, when we talked about, extended detector response XDR sort of capability, this is now going to other products to sort of see it, and that kind of works the other way around. So if you had a 0-day, malware, and you opened it, and you opened it on a device that had Defender for Endpoint, um, if it then Defender for Endpoint picked it up, quarantine it because it's seen it from a user behavior perspective, realize it's new malware, gets the hardware hash, that then feeds into Defender for Office and goes, hey, this file's been downloaded from an email. Can you go and check? Can you actually go and activate Zap to go and remove it everywhere else, as well as Defender for Endpoint being set to telling all the other endpoints to stop, don't execute this because block on first sight kind of stuff. So it is definitely that one product doesn't, it's better together kind of thing.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was, and I don't mean to reiterate, Microsoft's marketing spiel, right? But that is a truly all eggs in one basket, better together scenario, right? Completely there. Like understand a threat that might be part of your ecosystem, and then notifying all the other adjacent products around it. You know, license dependent, obviously, right? But everything around it to then say, take whatever preventative measures that you need against this singular entity. Maybe that's a file, in your example, right? So yeah, really really powerful.
It's quite interesting because I can't take credit for this, but I thought it was really good. But one of my connections on LinkedIn posted something about the whole all eggs in one basket, and they're saying you got that scenario that you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, and then they kind of go on to say, well, if you carried them individually, you can't do it. You can't carry a dozen eggs in each
Oh, I
hand.
see what you're saying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can't do it.
Yeah.
So how do eggs come? What do they come in, Sam? They come in cartons together. And it just like blew my mind a little bit. Like, you're absolutely right. You don't just have a pile of eggs, do you, to protect them? You can't hold them all together. They're in cartons, as a product stack. If we think about it that way.
Yeah, but playing devil's advocate, if you drop the carton, all of the eggs smash at once. Whereas I don't know. Yeah, I know.
Don't ruin it.
I don't
Don't
know.
ruin it.
I'm not. I'm not. I'm not. Well, we're seeing that, aren't we? Like
Yeah.
we're seeing a lot of bit of a divergence from this conversation, but we are seeing a lot of organisations previously who would have said, I don't want to put all my eggs in one basket when it comes to security. I want to spread my risk across multiple suppliers. Completely agree with that. But then you have these point solutions where you have to manage and maintain isolated silos of data, which then adds complexity. So there is a possibility for missing, signals that are coming out of them. And also, when it comes back to licensing, we are trying to do more with less, more Microsoft speak for today's episode, but we're trying to do more with less. So when you put the proposition like an E3 or an E5 proposition in front of a customer, it's very compelling. And instead of spending, maybe I don't know, but maybe many multiples of what you would spend on that journey, to get good coverage with point solutions. So So yeah, 100%, and we should. Yeah, I don't think we need to beat that drum anymore. That's for sure. Speaking of E3 and E5, licensing for Defender for Office. How, how do I get it? What does it cost? That sort of thing.
Okay, so it's in Microsoft 365 E5. We'll go from the top down. So that's the best of the best you can get at the moment. You can get it in Microsoft 365 E3 plus the E5 security SKU. You can get it in Office 365 E5. So no, don't necessarily have to have all the other products. It's just, if it's because it's related to Office, you can just buy it as with Office E5. Um, and then you have Microsoft Defender for Office Plan 1 and Plan 2. So there are some scenarios where some of this technology isn't, you can get some of it, but not all of it. So Plan 1 kind of gives you the safe links, safe attachment stuff, which is really powerful, with a few other bits. But then Plan 2 provides all the rest, the attack simulator and the advanced reporting and things like that, and the automatic incident response and that. So yeah, fairly
Okay, so
fairly simple,
yeah,
sort of.
this one is, yeah, because you can buy it in. You can buy it standalone, can't you?
Yeah.
Right. So that's really that's really powerful. So yeah, okay. Any other points, Alan, that you want to cover? Anything you think you've missed?
I would say we didn't really talk about how you configure it, but generally it's relatively simple to do. There's a few, it is all sort of back end technology, like you said, Sam. It's more about the protection. There's just some things like you may want to scope, maybe want to scope different types of the safe attachment functionality, the user experience to different users. Maybe like the CISO or the C suite, maybe you don't send them the email at all until it gets scanned in case there's something in the thing, or maybe you've got a finance team that need that email quick, but the attachment later, sort of thing. Or you just don't want to send it. You just want to monitor, maybe in some scenarios. Um, yeah, I think that's probably it. And yeah, it's relatively simple to sort of start configuring and to get going.
Okay, that sounds great. So yeah, lots of value, relatively easy to license, and it sounds like. I mean, I suppose you need to know the tooling and go through it, but from a, let's call it, like, external requirements perspective of rolling out, it's relatively simplistic because it is like cloud backend configuration, right? You're not got potentially lots of dependencies that you've got. There's no sensors to deploy, or there's nothing to connect, like that,
No,
to on
correct.
prem or
Yeah,
anything, right? So yeah, so from a, yeah, and again, preface that with, you need. We're not saying that being a Defender for Office expert is going to happen overnight, right? But in terms of effort to value ratio, it's probably pretty good. So okay, that's great. Thank you ever so much for that walkthrough, Alan. Next episode, I'm going to be taking us through a walkthrough of Azure Stack, which is a I would say a pretty extreme version of edge computing. So yeah, really exciting to talk about Azure Stack and to give us sort of a high level primer on that. Um, if you've enjoyed this episode, please do consider subscribing if you'd like to listen to more of this sort of content in the future. We have many other topics that we'd like to cover, and your listens and support is what will continue to fuel the podcast going forward.
we also have the ability for you to give us some feedback. Did you enjoy this episode? Did I miss something? Do you disagree? Um, Please use the form in the notes for the episode. We'd love to hear from you.
Thanks, Alan, again, and thanks everybody for listening, and we'll catch you next week.
Yes, thanks everyone for listening, and speak to you soon. Bye.